got some things to run through in a minute around some work that we've been doing in NHS England, and it's a really open session, really informal. So I'd love anybody to ask questions or get involved. And then Kaya, is there somebody after me on the agenda? Or can I just keep going until you tell me to stop talking?
Hi. Yes, I believe Sanjay is presenting afterwards.
There we go. Fab. So I will make a start in that case. I was just telling Kaya, for anybody who joined earlier, that I did a run through of this for my husband earlier this morning, and I'm glad I did because I realised that I hadn't embedded the video properly and it didn't quite work. So hopefully everything will be there now, but I'm going to start sharing my screen shortly and talk to you about some EDI tea breaks that we've been doing on NHS England. So bear with me while I just try and share the screen, and hopefully this will work. So can everybody see that? I'll put it onto slideshow in a start. Nods? Yep, fine. Okay, so we are from NHS England. We is me, Lindsay, who's on this call, and Lorna, who occasionally is able to join as well, but she's busy this morning, so she wasn't able to join. And I think we have talked about the NHS England Southwest Finance EDI network before, but I'll just run through the headlines because I think it's worth saying again. So we are a network, a finance EDI network that was established in 2021. And the aim was to contribute towards NHS England's ambition to improve representation. And that started off around representation of staff from ethnic minority backgrounds. And then our network widened that to cover all 9 protected characteristics. So we are open to anyone who's interested in equality, diversity and inclusion. Our aim is to work together to drive change and improvement. We do that via quarterly network meetings where we discuss specific topics, actions, concerns, how we can support staff. We do regular updates via our Finance Directorate newsletter, and we provide tea breaks. And these, I think, started off being during face-to-face meetings, and latterly they've been via our monthly Finance Directorate meetings, which are usually held on Teams. So by an EDI tea break, what we're really talking about is a bite-sized session that's aimed at either sparking interest or prompting discussion. And it's usually an introduction to a topic or a refresher on a specific topic. They're quite informal, so everyone's encouraged to share their experiences where they're comfortable to do that. And it usually starts with either a video or a presentation, and then we follow up with a conversation. We've covered things like neurodiversity, loneliness, and most recently we've covered ageism. And I'm going to share the highlights of that presentation with you in a minute so that you can see how we do it. So here is where we find out if it goes right or wrong. So I've got a video here. I'm going to press play. Can people shout if they can't see that? Oh, where have we gone? We've gone.
We can see Jess, but we can't hear anything.
Oh. Okay, hang on. Let's see what we can do about not being able to hear. That is because, right, I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute, everybody, and put my sound, make sure my sound's on. Okay, right. And there we go. Should be back on the video. I'm going to start again, and hopefully this will work. So glad I practiced this earlier. How's that?
Yeah, good.
Fabulous. Thank you, everybody.
So what's this all about?
Can say it again? I'm too old for this.
You just want me to say what people say about me.
Weird question, I guess.
My teacher says you'll go out of it. It's just a phase.
It was never a phase. I never grew out of it.
I guess I'm too reckless, I don't know.
People like to talk very loudly to me.
They say I don't think things through.
You're looking still good for your age.
I'll figure it out when I'm older.
You are having a senior moment.
When the focus is on my age,
life seems to get a little bit harder.
It feels like I'm not given a chance.
I need to keep up.
Or get out of the way.
I lack experience.
Or too much experience.
I'm baggage.
Only weighing people down.
Looking at my age.
Like it is a disease.
Where I work, no one takes me serious.
it makes me feel powerless.
And it hurts.
When people see only my age.
So I'm going to pause there and see if anybody has any thoughts about that. So I suppose I would start by saying I started off telling you about my struggles with technology, and it was quite tempting to think it's because I'm getting too old and I can't handle it, which I'm not sure is the truth, actually. I think I'm just out of practice. But I found that video quite interesting and quite moving, actually, because it's talking about people's experiences of how they're treated for something that's entirely out of their control, of course. Lindsay.
I was just going to jump in, Jess, and say I think the really interesting thing that plays through that to me, it doesn't matter who you are going to be impacted by this at some point. There was the comments about I'm too young, I'm too old. It doesn't matter if you're male or female in this. So we know that some of the things we look at from inclusion and diversity perspective impact smaller groups of people, but actually this impacts everyone. And I think, yeah, I find that video quite moving as well. It really makes you stop and think how that at points in your career you've maybe been seen to be too young for things, or there has been something that feeds in because of it maybe intersects with something else, like you may be young and female and people assume you may want a family, and that can impact your work and your career. So I just find it really interesting how that cuts across everything, can actually almost, I wonder if it does level everyone or not.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Thank you, Lindsay. And I was talking about this to a colleague earlier in the week, and we both decided that we weren't really sure when we'd been the right age. We were talking about situations earlier in our career where somebody, assumed we were there to make hot drinks, for example, which is that intersection of, I guess, sexism and ageism. And now I'm amongst the oldest of the mums in the playground, and that feels uncomfortable as well. And actually, I think we decided that at some point we must have been exactly the right age, but it obviously passed us in a 5-minute slot that we missed entirely. So there is an intersection between ageism and other characteristics. I'm just going to go back to the presentation. Oh, sorry, did somebody?
5. And then I'll do 7.
Sorry, Sanjay, were you adding something there? No, sorry.
Sorry, I was just trying to sort my presentation out. We've had technical issues. Apologies.
Absolutely fine. You completely missed me messing up the video, Sanjay, so don't worry. We've already had technical issues. You'll be absolutely grand. So if I just carry on with the presentation. So so ageism refers to how we think, so potentially thinking in stereotypes, how we feel, so whether we have an innate bias or prejudice against people of different ages, and how we act, so if we are discriminatory towards others or even ourselves based on age. And ageism is one of the 9 protected characteristics described in the Equalities Act of 2010. And in the workplace, which I suppose is primarily what we're thinking about right now, it means that people have protection or should have protection against discrimination because of their age, and that protects against unfair treatment, which might feel like not getting a job because you're considered to be too old, or you're considered to be too young or inexperienced, or not being included in things at work because people assume you won't be interested because you're older or because you're younger, or that bit about me saying I feel like I'm not very good at technology anymore, and is that because of my age? That's a good example, actually. And quite often there will be an intersection between ageism and others of the 9 characteristics. So, for example, that thing Lindsay described about being a young woman or maybe an older man, or in intersectionality around things like menopause, etc., is a good one as well. So, as we said, ageism is actually one of the most widespread forms of discrimination, because hopefully most of us will continue to age, and so the probability of experiencing ageism is quite high, and it affects everybody. But it's also higher for people with other protected characteristics, so ethnicity, religion, and sexual orientation, for example. And I'm just going to pop back to this one that says that actually it's not just about joking about somebody being older and not good at tech, or too young to be at work or anything like that. It actually has quite a far-reaching impact on aspects of people's health, and particularly mental health. I think there's lots of evidence that ageism can have quite an impact on economic growth, because we're missing out people who would be a really active part of the workforce. It makes us less empathetic as society, and we're losing out on human potential if we're automatically excluding people because of their age. So there's a really good resource called Ageism in the Workplace, which I'll share some links afterwards so people can do a bit of reading if they want. But it includes some key facts, which are that nearly 2/3 of people reported being treated or spoken to negatively because of their age, and these are people who've reached 50. We think at least 1/3 of people hold ageist beliefs. Older applicants are less likely to be hired and less likely to receive training. And 1 in 3 people over 50 think that they've been turned down for a job because of their age. And that's terrible, isn't it, really? Because we really are then excluding really important people from the workplace. So usually at this point in our EDI tea break, I'm just going to stop sharing there. We would go into breakout rooms and discuss some of that, but we haven't got enough people today to do breakout rooms. So again, I'm just going to open it up and just ask a couple of questions and see if anybody has any thoughts on this, really. So firstly, has anybody got any experiences of ageism that they feel happy to share? I've already shared that at least one experience of it being assumed that I must have been the hot drinks woman at a younger point in my career. Sanjay.
Well, I was just going to say, I've got my wife's uncle. When he reached 55, he's a qualified accountant, vast numbers of experience from working in industry in the Middle East, Africa, Europe. And then suddenly he was made redundant. He was commuting from Preston to London, to Manchester every day. Couldn't find a job for almost 2 years and just gave in, really. It was quite a shock. What I was going to ask, actually, Jess, was, is there a differential between, because traditionally there used to be a retirement age differentiation between males and females. Does that threshold sort of apply? So does ageism reflect earlier for ladies or not?
Oh, that is such an interesting question. I don't have any stats, Sanjay, but what I would say is I anecdotally, and I think there is a growing amount of evidence actually, I think women who have reached menopause experience an additional layer of ageism in the workplace, and that's where those things intersect. So assumptions about your mind being foggy and not being able to think quickly enough anymore. So there are some real intersections there actually, and I'm sorry to hear about your brother-in-law's experience, and I know my father had a similar experience actually. He was in his late 40s when he was made redundant, and he really struggled to get back into the workplace, and I find that quite worrying now, being in sort of mid 40s myself, and like most of us going through a period of organisational change. So that was the next question I wanted to throw out there really is how, given that most of us are now in a period of organisational change, are there things that we can do to protect anybody with a protected characteristic, but also specifically ageism? Lindsay, you put your hand up there.
So it wasn't particularly about that question. I can come back in later if you'd rather go down that route.
Go for it.
So I was going to flag up kind of ageism from two perspectives. One being I've been in a position when I was more junior in my career, turning up at a trust that was going through a foundation trust assessment process with my line manager, who was also a not much older woman, and the chair of the organisation, who was an older gentleman, said to us, well, you weren't quite what I was expecting. And my manager was, she was a very strong person. She was like, what, did you expect us to be two men with grey hair and suits? And he went, well, yes, actually I did. And so she kind of had a really nice way of deflecting it. But that was just an example of actually, if she hadn't have been so confident, I wouldn't have been confident in that space to kind of continue to do the job we were there and employed to do. And I know at points in my career, I had discussions with line managers going, how am I the person that should talk to that chief executive or board member and hold them to account when they've been doing this job longer than I've had my career for? So it's kind of you see some really interesting dynamics played through. But on the flip side, it kind of makes me think about it linking through to the kind of talent management process where we're all supposed to have in place to encourage talent through our organisations. When I was young and a graduate trainee, the person I would go to, it was that more mature lady in management accounts. She was close to retirement, but she knew everything and knew everyone. And actually, if we don't focus on keeping people in careers longer, as you say, we lose potential, we lose economic growth. And, I think we all experience it in little ways throughout our careers, the kind of the importance of ensuring that there isn't discrimination around age, no matter kind of at what point in your career you're in.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Charlie's nodding there as well. Charlie, did you want to add something, or were you just sort of agreeing there?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Jess. It's really interesting. I think even when you were saying about is there anything we can kind of do, I honestly think even having presentations like this is actually really helpful in highlighting what bias people have been through. But I wonder if there's maybe some kind of like workaround, particularly when looking at not necessarily recruitment, but around promotion and retention, and just think about the census results that came out, how we could link something in with that and making sure that all the training and things like that are equitable, no matter what age you are, whether it's younger or older, and making sure that how that's monitored and how that's equal would be a really interesting process to do.
I agree. Yeah, and I know we've there's been quite a lot of work done on how we recruit staff, and we recruit staff fairly, so we don't consider age or background or which school people went to as much as we shouldn't and don't consider sex or gender or race or anything like that. But I think there is still a lingering thing about ageism, that sort of assumption that if somebody's older, they must be more experienced, or perhaps they're closer to retirement, or maybe they won't be interested in taking the training. And even, the opposite, that if somebody's younger, they might, you can either assume that they'll be really keen to get ahead, or you can assume that maybe they'll be out all the time and they don't have the headspace concentrate on work. And it goes back to that thing of, you know, you're hard pressed to say what is the perfect age in that case. There obviously isn't one. So yes, I think there is some work to do about fundamentally treating each person as their own person and not a set of assumptions. So I am out of time pretty much, Kaya. So this is an example really of the kind of discussions that we are trying to use our EDI tea breaks to generate. And ageism is just an example. As I said, we've done something on loneliness and we did a piece of work on neurodiversity. And next time we do the tea break, we'll pick a different subject, and we really encourage members of the team to suggest something that they're interested in or that they think we need to cover. And as we've said, organisational change is everywhere at the moment. So I suspect we will continue to look at how we can support different staff groups through periods of change so that everyone can access the same opportunities. So just to sort of finish off, I guess, the sort of feedback and learning that we've had from our EDI tea breaks is that we should advertise the topic in advance, both because it gives people the chance to think about it, but also some of the subjects we cover can be quite difficult for members of staff. So it just allows people to duck out if they think that that is going to be something that they're going to find uncomfortable. We start the conversation, and I should have done it here this morning and I didn't actually, so apologies for that, but we start the conversation by agreeing some boundaries to make it feel like a safe space for people to share if they want to and be honest. It's not supposed to be formal training, so it's not supposed to be a tell session. It's supposed to spark debate and interest and just get people thinking. And then what we have learned, I think, is that we haven't allowed enough time for discussion. And again, we probably could have had a bit more of discussion today. So if you are going to do something like this, then allow time for people to discuss. And then finally, get people involved. So ask members of staff for topics. What do they want to talk about? Encourage sharing of experience and collect feedback. But we certainly have found it a really good way to introduce EDI subjects into work in a really manageable format that just gets people involved, and it doesn't feel like, oh, I've got to do an additional piece of training or I've got to sit through half an hour of talking. It's about being really informal and sparking interest. So I'm going to stop there. Sorry, Kaya, I'm 6 minutes over. Apologies from me, and thanks for bearing with me with the video there, guys.
Thank you, Jess.
Can I just put a small observation in? I mean, I think it seems to be in the professional sector that ageism tends to manifest itself quite closely. Whereas if you look in the retail sector, they quite often let people carry on working into their 70s. Perhaps we need to take a leaf out of their book, you know, the patience that they can provide and the knowledge and guidance that they can provide younger people is quite important. There's a lesson to be learned there, I think.
I think that's so fascinating because I would also observe that actually, if you look at the NHS wider, so if you go beyond the sort of the corporate office areas that we're all in, it's absolutely routine for nursing and medical staff to work right up to the point of their sort of official retirement age, and quite often beyond as well, actually. And these are jobs which are actually much more physical, I would say, than ours. You know, you're on your feet, you're managing people, you're lifting things. So it's sort of, we seem to do quite well in one area. It feels a bit more like it's those, I don't know, the sort of the corporate functions or the things where you have to use a computer or thinking. I don't know that we bring these kind of biases to work. So yes, I agree. And it would be such a shame to lose. I mean, especially in a world where realistically, I'm gonna say it, most of the people on this call will be working into the late 60s, if not beyond. It would be absolutely outrageous, wouldn't it, if we sort of wrote those people off at 55 and said, you know, sorry, you don't have anything else to give, when clearly they have sort of 15 years worth of learning ahead of them and all of that experience to share as well. So thank you. I think that's a good point. Did anyone else want to add anything before I hand back to Kaya and then over to Sanjay?
I think just adding to that from a sort of age perspective, I like to look at it from a different way, and obviously what we say from a corporate side, losing individuals once they come close to retirement, I I think is quite challenging in a way, because like you say, you lose all that knowledge and all that experience, but how much does that cost an organization overall? Say if you've got, say for example, here, and I'll share it openly, we've lost 2 individuals who have retired, and the cost of that knowledge is so vast at the minute. The team is struggling because you're not getting access to that knowledge that individuals know about, and the process and all the stuff that's in relation to maybe saying like an overseas team, the policies around that, and people coming from overseas to get treatment and stuff. You see the team really struggling to get to the point whereby, we know about that, we understand that, and we understand the detail around that. And I think it's realistic. I think there should be some succession planning in advance, at least 12 to 18 months, where a discussion is had to say, okay, you're coming close to retirement. What are your plans? Do you want to? Are you going to continue to work in an ad hoc role? Would you consider maybe just 1 or 2 days a week as on a consultant basis? Is that something that could be considered?
I think that's a really good idea, and I think it is not something that traditionally we have been very good at, and it is particularly pertinent now. Many organisations we know are opening voluntary redundancy schemes because they have to, because they've got to make those corporate costs. And there are 2 elements, I think. One is, I think lots of us probably assume that perhaps the older members of the team would be more interested in voluntary redundancy, and then we get a shock when it's younger members of the team. So that, there's a bias playing out there, which we should get rid of. But also things are moving really quickly, and I don't know how much time and energy we're putting into that succession planning. How are we training the next generation up? How are we passing over that skills and experience? I think that's a really good point. I think it's not anything we're particularly good at. Oh, Charlie, did you put something in the chat there? Sorry, I just have a quick quiz.
Yes. I was just thinking if it was something maybe we could do across the region, because it's such a good idea, and it would be nice to have like you say, like an open space where we could discuss these types of topics and just have it really informal, just a lunchtime, well, maybe not over lunchtime so people get a break, but just a drop-in session. These kinds of things, because the things you're discussing, I'm sure, are things that everyone's experiencing across the teams. I'll talk to Karen, our chair of the I&D ambassadors, and maybe see if that's something we could look at setting up. So it sounds like a good idea.
And I will say, Charlie, that the people who originally did this presentation did it in a much slicker way than I have. So perhaps we'll try and get them involved as well. It would be a good experience for them. But yes, and if anybody on this group has ideas of topics that they think they would like to cover, then please shout, because we can certainly help develop some of those ideas and just give some sort of framework around how to do it in a bite-sized kind of format. So thanks, everyone. Right, I've definitely used up more than my time. So Kay, are you happy to take on? Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jess. That was really, really good. So time for the next presentation. This is over to Sanjay now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. So Dev Patel, he works in NBT with myself. So we lead the NBT EDI team. So we've just got a presentation we've put together on EDI. Kaya, you suggested sponsorship as well. So we've got a separate one. If people would like to listen to that, we're more than happy to go play that through. So I'll just share my screen and move over to our presentation. Beginning. There you go. Now, if you've got questions, please let me know. We won't be able to see any hands up on screen. So, as I said, Sanjay Sampat, Principal Financial Accountant at North Bristol NHS Trust. And I have here...
I'm Dev Patel, who's basically the credit controller for MBT.
Okay. So we're talking about equality and diversity, and today we're just going to talk about why we need it, who can be involved, give you a brief overview of the committee we have at present at NBT, a few slides on what we've done so far, some work we've been doing as well on BME analysis, and our plans for the future. It's gone backwards. It's gone backwards. There we go. Technical issues for everyone there. So
Right, so round off with EDI, we've been charged basically through the Sponsee network to set up a EDI network across the Southwest, and setting an example to make the Southwest more of an inclusive workplace, a space where people are safe to come and talk, and also talk about, look at opportunities, how they can improve themselves from a personal perspective, making sure we're also legally compliant as well. And also, people may come with different ideas from a different perspective, which will make things hopefully should make things a lot better from a workplace, but also ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to present themselves in a way that makes it easier for them to work, and also look at potential future career opportunities around next jobs, what they're looking for, where they come from, and giving those people that advantage and opportunity. Next slide, please, Sanjay. So from an EDI perspective, it's open to anybody. There is nobody that we exclude. We like to make sure that everyone is encouraged to get involved and participate, regardless of their background or role that they undertake. So this enables a better open opportunity in terms of experiences, and those that are represented from different backgrounds and experiences. And we as a committee say you can get involved as much as you want, or as less as you want. But we do like to have people who want to be more actively involved to evolve the EDI network across the Southwest. So and so that we can set an example to show that we are a great network, as a system to work within. One of the key things within it, we are not an exclusive club. We like others to be involved. So the committee itself is myself, I'm Dev Patel. You've got Chrissy, who works in the private patients overseas team, and then you've got Sanjay, who's sitting next to me. As you can see, a lot more happy than anybody is these days, and it's probably younger youth days. I'd say I'm probably the much better looking one out of the two of us from a Lauren Hardy perspective.
Absolutely. And one of the things we've been encouraging, so Chrissy in the middle there, I've been encouraging her to use her full name. She's got a beautiful name, Krasimira, and we've been encouraging her to use that full name because it just represents her Bulgarian roots. So they're the three people who have it in the moment, who sort of lead EDI at NBT. We have little sub-pockets, little subgroups of people who come and take part. And as Dev said, we don't want people to make it a second job. Myself and Dev do this because we really enjoy it, and we do it in our own time as well in the evenings. And but those who are possibly less invested can do it, do an hour a month or whatever. We just encourage them to think about it and make sure there's some certain level of focus and engagement from them. So we'll talk about where we are.
So we have a drafted terms of reference, which has been ratified by the senior management team. We are trying to set the template across the BNSSG network, so the Bristol, North, Somerset and South Gloucestershire network, ensuring that we have the ability to be open and reachable through outreach, supporting staff, assist with anything that's related around consultations if there's any issues that they face, the opportunity to also look into get to raise issues for if they're faced a problem within a particular area through our freedom to speak up champions as well, which Sanjay is one. Looking at well-being, careers advancement and outreach in terms of community engagement, so working with local organisations and universities and schools to get people to be more involved in relation to what we have from a career perspective. One of the big things that we've been doing recently at NBT is actually helping individuals internally and externally through work experience, maybe if it's a 3-day, 5-day to come into MBT, spend some time across the different divisions, different areas. So from myself, credit control, Sanjay, financial services, around the accounting, management, financial management. So people within the finance management team in different divisions, just understanding what they do from a day-to-day perspective to give people that opportunity to make an informed choice to decide whether finance and accounting is a role for them. We've also had an opportunity for 2 individuals who have come from a different area of MBT, who managed to secure full-time opportunities in relation to working within finance. So going from one particular has gone from reception to now working within our research team as an assistant management accountant. We've also had 2 leaves from school join us from the Insight program. One in particular has managed to actually secure a role within payroll, which is quite fantastic for the individual. And we're looking at further opportunities for another 2 to come and join us, maybe post-September. There's also a number of students and mature students that will be coming to MBT between 3 and 5 days in the next coming weeks. We have a large group, a cohort next week. I think it's 7 that are joining us next week. So that's from Sanjay's perspective for 2 days, which will be full on, where they'll get access to the associate directors, management accountants, assistant management accountants, HR business partners, to see whether if identify if finance is going to be a career path within the NHS for themselves. One of the other big things that we tend to try and we have embarked on is actually having like a monthly or quarterly social committee. So basically, colleagues within MBT and finance going out, getting to know one another better. So it enables that cross-functional working to be more harmonized, and even being able to sort of work together more closely, but also setting up the networks around a sort of mental first aid, yeah, mental health first aid, fire wardens and first aid. So it gives the people those opportunities to add those small additional skills, which are quite beneficial to others. In terms of our community outreach, we have we look to work within the local areas for individuals from different backgrounds, setting up like the health clinics just to get someone like blood pressure checks, blood sugar checks, blood pressure, just general overall well-being and health, to be honest. And I'll pass you over to Sanjay.
Yeah, the last point, sorry, I moved on one slide too early quickly. The community outreach program is quite important because we recognised that there are certain pockets of society, let's say the Indian community, who are so reluctant to seek healthcare because they see it as a sign of weakness, or they like to try and manage it themselves in their families. And it's certainly the same with the Jewish communities as well. They leave issues till it becomes more acute and needs more intervention. So what we're trying to do is at our temple, gurudwaras, other community centres, work with the community team to get a day where we can get doctors in, do health checks, and they can come back. It'll be things like hypertension, advice around cancer issues, particularly when there's issues that are prevalent in certain communities. We can focus on that. But it's not only just those communities who will be invited, it'll be the local community. Anybody who lives in that area will be welcome to come along to those health days. And they will be able to take away advice. And if possible, we're hoping that if we can, in the past, we were able to send letters to their GPs to do a follow-up. That's the funding for that's fallen away, but we're trying to see if we can get that reinstated or to some degree, and the community pays a contribution towards these healthcare workers as well, coming along with their equipment, and they can get some real relevant advice rather than having me sitting on a desk and saying your sugar's too high. They get somebody who actually knows what they're talking about to a higher degree, and can give them some real pertinent advice to take to their GP with them. So we're working on that. what we were going to talk about is analysing our team. So I mentioned we looked at the global majority, as it's called here in NBT, at our team. So we looked and we did an exercise just last year looking at the local population data categorised by ethnicity. And we said, let's compare that against our finance team. And I know we do have the RES returns. This was a slightly different lens, and we're going to use RES returns to look at other characteristics now that we're out of year end. But what we found was when we looked at the local population in our own team, we got the data from the council and our HR staff, and we split the workforce into bands of staff because it was just easier to manage. So the bands were bands 2 to 6, 7 to 8B, and 8C to 9. And the result was we found NBT's finance team was quite well positioned against local population, i.e., especially those from Asian backgrounds. So we had more Asians, so that's Indian, Pakistani, and we're going to include the Chinese community, and then that. We had more of those people within the finance team than the local population demographic, so that's a plus. But when we look at those, as you move through the seniority, those groups, the advantage that we had in terms of numbers falls away significantly. So as you reach higher bands, there's less people from the global majority community. And there was only, as I say, as this slide says, only one person at 8C or above, and that's a 10% person. There's 10 people in the team, and only one of them was could be classed as Asian, they're Middle Eastern. But so what we're doing is working with management to look at how the workforce has changed and identify a way to correct this. And we're working with the trust, so we're looking at the recruitment processes. And what they're trying to do is look at the ratio and how could I say the success rate of those people getting not only the interview but the job, and try and skew that. Look at the skew that it is, and make sure that it works better. So we're not going to try and move biases or in terms of. In a disfavourable way towards the BME population. We're trying to make sure that people are equitably given those opportunities, and it's the best person gets the job, not who's the best fit in whatever time frame is suiting to us. So, as I said, we've reviewed the BME data. We want to look at other characteristics, so gender, sexual orientation, age. So that comes into Jess's presentation earlier, faith, disabilities, etc. We want to look at all of that data. We want to look at creating a BNSSG-wide network. So we've got NBT, we've got UHBW, you've got the ICB, we've got AWP in Bath, we've got North Somerset, and all of those. They're all really interested in seeing what we're doing. And what we're hoping to do is when we've created those networks and those stronger links, they're still quite a bit behind the curve to us. We'll start looking at ways of sharing roles, and that will enable people to seek promotions through ideally moving jobs or secondments, which will give people an opportunity to take a dip into a job and see if it suits them and vice versa. And it means it takes a bit of the risk out of losing a job at the same time. We have already begun to form links with other networks. So we have immensely strong links with London, the Northwest, Oxford and Cambridge. Dev and I were at the HFMA conference in London last year, and we found we were doing a great deal, very similar to the people who won the EDF award. We're not far behind the curve, and considering there's only 3 of us, I'd like to say we're doing an admirable job, and we should be able to move forward and hopefully win an award in some time in the future. And we have won awards and been nominated for awards in the Southwest. So not blowing my own trumpet, but if you've got an HFMA ticket going, Devin, I wouldn't mind some. I think I might have just closed this presentation down there, but excuse me, I've accidentally shut the presentation down there. So there we go. So what we want to do ideally is we have joined the NHS. I personally think it's the best place I've worked, and I've worked in a few places in the Audit Commission and other assurance and audit services on the dark side of things. And I've saw the light when I could and moved across as quickly as I possible. And I've worked in the private sector. The NHS is by far and away the best place that I've worked, and I get very cross when anybody criticises the NHS to me, and I back everything that we do because I know how hard everyone works to keep it moving, and I don't think they see that. So we want it to be the best, and we want to make sure we've got the right people working for it. So is that? There we go. So any questions? I'll stop sharing, and so we can see you. Dead silence, stunned. Jess.
Well, firstly, I think you should blow your own trumpets. Well done. There's a question in the chat from Laura that I'll read out if she doesn't want to ask it herself. But firstly, I was going to say, I think the point you made at the beginning about names is so interesting and so important. We have a member on the team. I won't share his name for obvious reasons, but we have a member of our team who spent quite a long period of his career being called an entirely different name, an Anglo-Saxon name compared to his actual name, because it was easier for other people to manage, which is just absolutely outrageous, isn't it? So I loved that bit, the point that you made at the beginning there.
Yeah, well, my parents had a shop, and my dad's name is Narendra, so we used to have a lot of people, and we had a lot of elderly ladies come in, and I'm not stereotyping, they couldn't say that, so they called him John. So for him, unfortunately, it stuck because I'll sometimes call him John when I'm being cheeky. But it does work. I mean, I coach football, and I have some children who call me Steve, but in turn, I'll call them something like Bob. Yeah.
There we are.
If you want to change my name, I'll change yours.
Change yours.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Laura, did you want to ask your question? Are you happy for me to read it from the chat?
I can read it, that's fine. It's more just around the community outreach programs around the hypertension that you were doing, which sounds amazing. I was curious, is this something that the finance team are doing, or is it something that your trust are doing with the inclusion of finance?
What it is we reached out to, I was at a careers fair, funnily enough, talking to sixth form students, and we had a stand with some healthcare professionals from NBT there. And I said to them, I'm also on the Temple committee in Bristol, and we're looking at trying to create a quarterly network of, things where it'll be a healthcare or CV workshops or, advice. So we're trying to do some sort of some quarterly workshops that for the communities in the area. And so I talked to them and I said, is there any literature you can share with us that we, so we can put a display stand on at the Temple and people can come in and they can pick up a leaflet or whatever. So they got through that, and then they put me in touch with somebody who works in community services at NBT, and it sort of mushroomed from there. So he got in touch, he brought some more information for me. He's come to the Temple, talked to the secretary, and in turn, our own EDI, they're called the staff network, so their HR, heard about it, and they said, we'd like to link up EDI from a trust perspective, and we want you to link up to be sort of the non-clinical side of things and provide a sort of face to that kind of the views that we're putting across. So we've got a more rounded view of what takes place and vice versa. And through that, it's kind of mushroomed. So we got Ian Riddle from the charity side of things said, we've got a doctors team, and they used to go out and they had an event last year for the Chinese community where they had something like a few hundred people through the door. So I said, well, we could do that. If you can do that and you can get some funding, we can try and find space for you either at the Bristol Temple or the Sikh Temple, because there's parking there, and work with them. And we've had at the Temple, we do vaccinations. So for the COVID vaccinations, anyone could walk in and get their vaccination, and so on. So we're sort of leveraging off that. But then another sort of team who's working directly through this found out about it, and there seems to be a lot of pockets working to it. And we seem to be the gel that's bringing them all together, actually.
Okay. Yeah, it's really positive. Yeah, it's really positive. I was just more intrigued because I think I would love to be able to do something like that within our community in Somerset. We have a very small finance team in Somerset, and I think it would be really hard for us to dedicate time to be able to do these things. And we've got an EDI lead within the ICB that kind of leads on these kinds of things. So I wonder if it's something that I could talk to her about.
We're more than happy for you to get in touch with us. We are, as I said, we're trying to create those links, and whether it's yourselves in North Somerset or somebody up in Manchester, we're not averse to creating those relationships with anybody. The more, the merrier. And the idea is, my vision is to create a national NHS EDI network where we can all learn from each other. And I know each area has its own specific demographical issues, but we can counter that. And that's something which Dev talked about, say, for the Insights programme that Charlie's quite aware of. She's been helping us with that. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but that's helping youths who've left school who are from a low social economic background get a 12-month paid job. So Hanad, who's in my team's got a permanent job, and we're helping the others. There's 3 others here and the Bristol UHBW try and find work as well, because they've kickstarted their career. They've shown interest. We want to try and help them.
Lovely. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie.
Hi both. Thank you very much. That was really interesting. I just had maybe it's a bit of a two-parter question. So you mentioned kind of working across the system with your EDI group and trying to get that going. I just wondered if you had sort of any feedback mechanisms or anything like that you're using, not just from MBT but across, in terms of what people want to see the EDI group do, and how staff can kind of contact you about inclusion and belonging and what you hope to do with that. And then my second part was, although conscious of the time, but my second part was, what do you think is next for your EDI work? You're both so passionate about it in terms of your ambition and roadmap for the group. What are you kind of hoping to do with it going forward that you haven't done yet? Okay,
so the first thing is, for NBT, we're working with Sirona, the ICB, UHBW. We meet monthly. They have been following what we're trying to do, and we're not sort of dictating what they should be doing. We're giving them a template with a tick box, and they can choose and pick and choose what suits those organisations. So in terms of those colleagues, the first step is for them to be able to feed back to that particular organisation. As Dev mentioned, as well as if there are concerns and they feel a bit vulnerable about talking to their own organisations, they can come and talk to us. And we have had, for example, colleagues in other trusts, and this trust come to me through the feedback, the FTSU. So that's the Freedom to Speak Up network. It's like whistleblowing. So we've tried to help them through certain issues, and we've helped clinical staff who've had issues with, nursing and getting qualifications and being passed over. Time and time again, we've helped facilitate discussions with management. We've stepped away from it once we've passed it on to the Guardian to pass on with the case details. We've sort of let them take away with it, so we're sort of distancing ourselves. But we're the sort of first step point in that process. So people can come to us, whether it's in our organisation or anybody else's. Ideally, if they feel more comfortable and they can go and speak to somebody in their own organisation, that's fine. But we, in turn, if we've got particular issues, what we will do is, if it affects our organisation, we will speak to our assistant directors of finance and the director of finance, Elizabeth Poskett. She's really engaged with this whole process. If it affects the other organisations, well, we're more than happy to talk to leaders over there as well, and we have done in the past as well, to sort of say, by the way, you've got a particular concern brewing here. You might want to look into this before it bubbles over. We try and reach those points before, and also think about things in advance as well, so they don't ever reach a point of causing discontent for any members of staff. For the future, we're looking at a lot of other things. So we're moving into the mentoring space. So as you know, there's the sponsorship program. So Dev and I were charged to do this by our sponsors, Sarah Truelove and Simon Truelove, who are our sponsors respectively. And in turn, through that, I myself have become a sponsor. So I'm sponsoring somebody at UHBW, and I'm mentoring somebody at the ICB, and I'm mentoring 2 people at NBT as well. And Dev is doing something similar at NBT. He's mentoring a couple of people. So we're trying to look at that. But what we're trying to also do, and Dev is very much into development and self-development. He reads books and he can quote things off the top of his head. So what he's trying to do is, with ourselves, we're trying to create a series of development workshops that we'll roll out, and we'll do it to our little team in the first instance. And if it receives a positive reaction, we'll start doing it to other people around the network, and we'll be more than happy to present to whomsoever when we've got a small suite of products available for you.
That's great. Thank you both. Really enjoyed the presentation, so thank you.
No problems.
Thank you both. Do we have any more questions for Sanjay and Dev before we close up? I thought that was really interesting. Thank you for sharing all the good work you've been doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's really great as well to feel your enthusiasm and energy, because these are quite challenging times, aren't they? So it's great that you've been able to keep that. So thank you for that. In that case, Kaya, I think we're probably ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
Are there any other messages you wanted to make sure people had at the end of today?
We are happy to send the slides round as well.
Yes.
And the recording will be uploaded on our YouTube and our IND playlist. So please let me know if you would not like that to happen. But if not, I'll send everything around. And thank you so much, everyone. It was a really good session.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely to see you. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.